Hey guys, Ningen here, and today we are going to be talking about Elden Ring Nightreign, the game that was announced, of course, at the Game Awards. A new game set in the universe of Elden Ring, but this game is going to be probably the most unique Souls-like game, or Souls-like spin-off, I guess, from the official FromSoft library that we have seen, with it having a focus on fast-paced co-op gameplay with a roguelike element. There's going to be lots of interesting things to go over with this game. I think it looks really interesting. As a From Software fan, I know people have some concerns about a game that is a big departure from the normal Soulsborne like playbook, but I think this is going to be very interesting. It looks like it could be a fun game for sure. I will be covering it on this channel probably quite a bit. There will definitely be gameplay, guides, tutorials, tier lists, like all that kind of stuff. I definitely will be going all in because I am a huge From Software fan. So if you want to be up to date with any Nightreign news as it comes out, do subscribe to the channel. Click that like button. And anyway, we're going to get into an interview that was held with the director of Nightreign, Mr. Ishizaki. I think it was directly an interview with IGN, or it's just being re-reported by them. But it gives some interesting information about the game, the thought behind its design, and answers a few questions. So you may have seen some of this info floating around before, but it's nice to have this all summarized in one place. So it talks about his career a little bit. It's his first time as director of a game with Nightreign, but how has he been involved in previous From Software titles? So he was a level designer for the original Dark Souls, as well as Bloodborne, including on Bloodborne being a battle designer, which is definitely an interesting job title for sure. And then he was the battle designer for Dark Souls 3 and Elden Ring. So when asked what prompted him to develop Elden Ring Nightreign and what makes it different from FromSoft's previous works, he says there are two main reasons why I developed Elden Ring Nightreign. The first reason was that I wanted to develop a challenging title based on the Dark Souls series and Elden Ring. The second reason was that I personally liked cooperative games. Combining these two, the development of Elden Ring Nightreign began. Now it is an interesting question because obviously Souls games have always had co-op, and Elden Ring definitely had a big expanded version of the Soulsborne co-op format, but of course it always has been somewhat limited, with fog walls being impassable with summons, areas like once you've beaten a boss not being able to be summoned in and stuff. So there is limited cooperative play in a normal Souls game, right? So this aims to be very different from that. And then he was asked what genres and titles inspire him for his love of cooperative games. He says, I can't name any specific games. That feels very much like an industry answer, because like he probably doesn't want to mention games made by other studios and stuff, but he just says he's played cooperative games in a variety of genres: shooters, board game simulations, and MMOs. So of course the big question that a lot of people had as soon as Nightreign was announced was, how is Miyazaki involved in Nightreign? Because of course when it comes to the Soulsborne catalogue, Dark Souls 2 is kind of like the red-headed stepchild. Even though I think it's a great game still, it probably is the worst of the original Souls trilogy. And a lot of people cite Miyazaki's non-involvement, or at least limited, very limited involvement, as a reason why it's not as good. So of course a lot of people want to know how involved he is in this like spin-off for Elden Ring. So it says Miyazaki was involved up until the creation of the initial concept for Nightreign. Since then he has left it all to me. Currently, the development of the game is being led by me as the director. Now, it's one of those things, those of you, this could be completely unrelated for some of you watching the video, but those of you who know me for my content about Dragon Ball, it is very much like Toriyama picking Toyotaro to take over creating the Dragon Ball manga, right? It's been overseen by, you know, the grandfather of the From Software games, the Souls games that we all love, and then been placed into the hands of this guy to run the game as he sees fit, right? And whilst it is a a different person, it's not Miyazaki. Miyazaki's obviously put his faith in this guy in order to develop this title. So even though Miyazaki is not as directly hands-on involved as he is with the other games that we've seen, he obviously believes that this guy has what it takes in order to handle development of the game. So now we get some interesting information about the story and the gameplay. So in terms of the story, what is the relationship between Elden Ring and Nightreign? Nightreign is a spin-off of Elden Ring. The two share the same worldview in the period leading up to the Fracture War. After the Fracture War, the worldview is completely different. Nightreign is a parallel world of Elden Ring. The reason why I chose a parallel world is because I wanted to respect the story that Elden Ring players experienced, Nightreign is a different story from Elden Ring. So I think that people who have an attachment to Elden Ring can play it with peace of mind. So they do ask an interesting question. Since it's a parallel world, does that mean George R.R. Martin, who created the mythology of the main story, was not involved in Nightreign? And it does say that he was involved in setting the worldview of Elden Ring, but he did not come up with anything new for Nightreign. And I mean, the thing is, when it comes to George R.R. Martin's involvement in Elden Ring anyway, as far as I know, a lot of his involvement was writing the story of like the lore of some of the gods and like the events that led up to the shattering and all that stuff, right? So the actual main story plot of the plot of the game itself wasn't directly written by him, right? He just worked on a lot of the lore. At least that's my understanding. If that's wrong, do let me know down below in the comment section, and I can look it up. Maybe that could be an interesting other video. But he is not involved in any of the new story for Nightreign. So how can you find out the stories of each playable character? There are 8 playable characters, each with their own unique backstory. You can learn about the characters by reading records at the base, the hidden roundtable, and the game also includes elements that allow you to enjoy the character's backstory. Because remember that this game, you pick one of the set characters. It does say here that there are 8. So you pick one of the 8 characters and you start off with a specific loadout of like weapons, skills, and abilities, similarly to how you start the normal FromSoft games, but obviously you get a lot more leeway. You start off at level 1, you've got barely, you know, just your base equipment. In this, characters will start off with certain spells, armor, and weapons, and as you go around getting your upgrades during the day before you fight the boss at night, we don't know a huge amount of the details. I assume that you won't get as much freedom as you do in the normal Souls games. Like, you can't start off as the Pyromancer and then just turn him into a like miracle build or something instead, or turn him into a like full strength build. But we'll have to see how that progresses. Of course, I will do videos on that stuff once we know more. But yeah, there are 8 separate characters, each with their own story, and those can be developed as we go. So will the ashes that appeared in the main story of Elden Ring also appear in Nightreign? The element of ashes itself also appears in Nightreign. However, the way ashes are handled is different between Elden Ring and Nightreign. That's because one of the 8 player characters is a character who mainly fights using ashes. So this is very interesting. I'm definitely looking forward to seeing what that character is like and what their build is like, right? Different ashes of war, potentially different summons. So that will certainly be very interesting. So now we have some questions about the technical side for number of players and sales format. So this is one of the interesting things that I do wonder the decision making behind it, and I do kind of wonder if there's going to be matchmaking or anything, because it does say, do you need 3 people to play Elden Ring Nightreign? Can you play solo? So the game is designed for 3 players. You can play solo. There is no 2-player mode. The reason we designed it for 3 players is because we wanted to create a different kind of fun from previous games and have players experience that. We think that players will be able to experience a different feeling of accomplishment and joy from Dark Souls and Elden Ring with Elden Ring Nightreign. So obviously this is interesting because like bosses have been designed with co-op in mind, which I think is really interesting, because obviously if you've ever played any of the older FromSoft games and you've played them through with co-op, like some bosses that can be really challenging as a solo player just get absolutely destroyed when you have a second person and you can like split the aggro, especially humanoid enemies that can be backstabbed, and you can just split the aggro between 2 of you. Like those bosses just get completely destroyed. So these guys, bosses in this game have been planned with that in mind. So it gives me flashes of like Champion Gundyr style, like you go up behind a boss to go for a backstab and then just get immediately straight kicked in the face or something. So definitely very, very interesting. But obviously with the 3-player thing, it's kind of interesting. So they say, why is Nightreign designed for 3 players? Nightreign. Is there a reason why it isn't 4? After much development, we found that the optimal balance was 3 players. We wanted to achieve a balance that would allow each player to feel challenged while still ensuring that they could enjoy cooperative play with other players. So it does still, it's interesting because like solo runs, I imagine will probably be a thing that I'll potentially even do videos on, right? That will be a challenge doing the whole thing by yourself. But it is kind of odd that you can't do it with 2 people, especially because I'm not sure if this is mentioned further down now, because I did scan this article, of course, before recording. I don't think it has crossplay. So I, for example, probably going to get it on the Xbox because that's what I've played all the previous games on, plus what I played Elden Ring on. One of my friends that I've often played these games co-op with plays it on Xbox, but I don't necessarily have a set 3rd person. So since seemingly you can only play it solo or with 3 people, do we have to find someone else, or is there a way that the game will find a third player for you? So that's going to be interesting to see. Are there any assist features for players who are experiencing a FromSoft title for the first time with Nightreign? There are no settings to make the game easier. So the good old FromSoft meme, there is no easy mode. The good old get good is alive and well. FromSoft believes in its players and adjusted the difficulty level so that anyone can overcome it if they keep playing. There are items called relics that permanently strengthen characters. So we recommend that you play the game repeatedly and collect relics while you are still new to the game. Because remember, it's a roguelike style game, but you are obviously able to get items and buffs and things that will be permanent increases. So if it is difficult at first, it's kind of one of those things where you just get on your grind, kind of like you could in a normal FromSoft game, right? If an area is really tough, you can hang around in the early parts of that area or go back to a previous area and farm souls and level up and maybe have an easier time when you then go back. So an interesting question here. There's been a lot of talk about the poor performance of operational titles such as Concord, Suicide Squad, Kill the Justice League. Do you have any concerns about releasing Nightreign in this climate? And I think this is a good question that could alleviate, the answer I say is good, that could alleviate some fears. Nightreign is not a management type title. This is a one-time purchase game, and we are not particularly concerned about the poor performance of management type titles. From Software is focused on making the games we develop fun. If it's fun, we're confident that users will like it, so we're not worried about that. So that answer seems to imply that this isn't going to be a game that has a battle pass and multiple purchasable packs of like skins and weapon buffs and temporary XP boosts and all that kind of stuff, which I think is kind of what they're alluding to with these other games, and Ishizaki stating this is not a management type title, it's a one-time purchase game. So that is definitely very reassuring. The aim of each session, which lasts about 40 minutes, is to create a compressed RPG. So each game of Elden Ring Nightreign is made up of 3 days of sessions. Why is that the case? The concept was to make a condensed RPG. RPGs have their ups and downs, and players sometimes gain and sometimes lose. I think the best part of RPGs is that all of these different experiences ultimately come to fruition. In order to create a harmonious experience that allows players to experience the true essence of RPGs, each game took place over 3 days. The 3-day session lasts about 40 minutes, so did the user culture of speed runs, in which players compete to complete the game in the shortest possible time, influence the development of Nightreign. And he says, I think that optimizing gameplay and researching good gameplay are ways to enjoy games. I myself like that type of gameplay. I think that this style fits Elden Ring Nightreign, so you could say that this game is inspired by cultures such as speedruns. Which is very interesting, because obviously when it comes to a Souls game, you can make progress from where you are, but it's not the kind of game that you can sit down and play for 40 minutes and you've finished the game, right? This is one of those, like many roguelike games, where you can sit down, play for an hour or two, and have done a couple of full runs and then go off and do something else. Or even if you only have that 40 to 45 minutes to spare, fit one session in and then you're done. You've potentially gained some permanent boosts or some other resources ready for the next time you play. So that is definitely very interesting. How will the boss battles progress over the 3-day session? So 8 bosses will appear in the final version. You will fight various bosses as you progress through the game. There is also a final boss, and I think you'll understand that the events that occur in the story are related to the final boss. So that's certainly interesting. We've seen a lot of cool things in some of these screenshots, like this weird giant, it looks like a giant spider crab. And there's also this really interesting, crazy, like one-armed centaur guy. So yeah, definitely some interesting new looking bosses, as well as some of the returning favorites that we saw in that preview trailer from the Game Awards. Will bosses that you've defeated once reappear stronger than they were in Elden Ring, similar to how you play through them multiple times? We are currently considering having bosses that have already been defeated reappear stronger. Please wait for further information. So that's interesting. Potentially extra options for a higher difficulty or challenge run mode, potentially. So that's kind of cool as well. We'll have to wait and see. Randomly changing map every time you play. Please tell us about the maps that appear in Nightreign. So a map based on Rimgrave from Elden Ring, the setting from this game is called Rimveld, will appear. New maps will not appear as the game progresses, but rather changes made to the map which will be reflected in gameplay. So it says about the field, which changes randomly each time you play. Regarding randomization, the weapons and items that can be obtained from the large bases, boss types, and bases change. As one of the asynchronous network elements, it is equipped with a mechanism that allows you to inherit weapons and items used by other players. So this is interesting. This is the roguelike feature, right, where you can find potentially a dungeon where there'll be some chests or a mini boss that will give you different items and buffs. Inheriting weapons used by another player is very interesting, whether that means players that came before you on a run, players on your run that die, and you could potentially switch builds with them. That would be kind of interesting. There's not a huge amount of detail about that. It does say what happened to the illusions of other players, which are familiar from Elden Ring, and the feature of exchanging messages with other players. You can still see ghosts of other players, but the ability to leave messages has been removed. The reason we removed the message function is that in this game, where each session is about 40 minutes long, there is no time to write your own message and no time to read messages. I mean, it doesn't take long to read messages, but I do kind of get, if the map is randomly changing and is being randomly generated like a roguelike title, you can't really have messages on the floor, right, that says, you know, beware of right or chest to the left, right, when the game is just going to randomly change every time. So I kind of get it. It is a shame to see one of the like staple features of the franchise, but it does make sense that it's not really appropriate for this particular style of game, right? So when progressing from day 1 to day 2, will minor enemies revive? For now, small enemies do not revive. In fact, they will not revive even if the player rests with a blessing. So I guess you have to try and work your way around the map and clear out as much as possible as you can within the time you have in order to power up for the boss. You can't stay and just farm like one area, right? So 8 unique playable characters. Have there been any changes to the characters or gameplay since the beginning of development? If so, please tell us how they have changed. We had envisioned from the beginning that each character would fight by combining their unique skills with arts, which are like special moves, like the weapon arts, right? This is because we thought it'd be easier to start a multiplayer game than creating a character. Fixed characters include tanks with high damage resistance and wizards who can use magic for long distance attacks. But why did you choose these types of characters? As it is a fantasy world RPG, there are playable characters that you would expect, but there are also some unique playable characters. We haven't revealed all the playable characters yet, so please look forward to the next update. I mean, that question, it almost is an easy enough answer to itself, right? I mean, those are the kind of typical RPG character builds, similarly to the character bases that you pick at the start of a normal FromSoft game. Even though, as we've already mentioned, you're free to develop them as you level up into anything you want, they do still have those starting archetypes. So it makes sense if you're starting the game as an already leveled character coming with equipment and skills, that they're still going to follow these same sort of archetypes that FromSoft has used in other titles as well, right? Nightreign will feature a currency called marks. What can you get by spending marks? So by using marks at the hidden table, you can obtain relics, which are items that permanently strengthen your character, as well as gestures and skins. Now, this is the thing we did talk about earlier, him talking about this one-time purchase game. This is the thing where I think people started to question, is this going to be a purchasable currency? And of course, even by him answering that it is a one-time purchase game, like, that doesn't mean it doesn't have optional purchases, which is what they love to call these battle passes and extra currencies and things like that. And as relics are things that can permanently strengthen your character, that obviously can add a pay to win element. I mean, it is a cooperative game rather than a PvP game, so I don't have a huge problem with those kind of games as a concept, but obviously it depends how in your face it is. Like, if every time you load up to the menu, it's like some of these games like Fortnite where you just have a big flashing shop on your front screen and like, buy this deal that goes away in 2 hours. Like, that's the kind of thing that I don't like, right, having shoved in your face. And it doesn't really mention much other than what the currency is. So it does say, are you considering a PvPvE or Battle Royale mode that combines players versus computer battles? So at this stage, we are not considering adding PvPvE or Battle Royale modes. Nightreign is being developed with cooperative play in mind. So it's not a Battle Royale, even though it does take some elements from that. But yeah, finally, please give us a message for the readers. Nightreign is a very exciting game that will excite players. It will provide a sense of accomplishment and joy that is different from previous titles, so please look forward to it. So there's a note at the bottom saying that it's due to be released on PS5, PS4, Xbox Series X and S, Xbox One, PC in 2025. There is a network test upcoming. I'll probably do a video talking about that tomorrow, so you can register for the network test. I definitely will be doing that. I still need to look into, I guess it'll be part of filling out the network test application, whether you're actually able to stream or record it, because some games do let you do that and some don't. But obviously, if you are allowed to do that for Nightreign, I will be providing some content on that as well. So let me know what you think of all of the information that has been provided here by Ishizaki-san, the director of Nightreign. I think it's a very interesting project for a game. There was that period when Fortnite blew up where every single game was adding a battle royale mode for no reason other than to add one, and this seems to have taken some interesting concepts of that kind of game but still use them in a way that feels appropriate for a Soulsborne kind of universe. Because like I even saw people back when we saw the first trailer and people got some like more detailed footage, like this appears to be at the beginning of the game, or it might be the beginning of, I'm assuming it's only the beginning and not the beginning of each day, but you get dropped off by a giant bird, and of course people compared this to like the battle bus. But I mean, if you started the series with Dark Souls 1, like I did and a lot of people, being carried somewhere by a giant bird in a Souls game is not a new thing, right? So I guess we'll have to wait and see. Let me know all your guys' thoughts. Are you excited for Nightreign? Are you cautiously optimistic, or do you just flat out not like the look of it? Let me know your thoughts down below. And as I said at the very beginning, I'll be making a bunch of content on this game as it comes out. I'll bring you guys more news of the network tests and more details about the game, the characters and everything as it becomes available. So that is going to be it for the video, guys. Smash that like button, subscribe to the channel if you are new, and I will see you all next time. Peace out.